the most vicious. They called him Manos de Piedra.
And that name, Manos de Piedra, is true. Hands of stone. Every punch that he hit me with felt like bricks. Stone, rocks.
He was a born fighter, a warrior. Some called him a savage. To his people, he was a hero.
He told me once, I like to be like Robin Hood. If I have money, I will give the poor people all the money. And he did. And he did.
He fought his way out of the slums of Panama, and he made himself a king.
I went out in the swimming pool, and there was about 60 people all sitting there, eating steaks, drinking Dom Perignon champagne.
He was living a poor boy's fantasy, but his success would trigger his downfall.
As you become affluent, and everybody is always putting a dish before you or invite you to dinner, you know, how can you do anything else but get a little bit plump?
Duran's arch rival would make him pay for his excesses.
My intentions was to fight Duran ASAP because I knew Duran's habits. Eat, gain 40, 50 pounds, and have to sweat it off. That was my plan.
Then the sport's toughest champion committed its ultimate sin.
And what's happening? Duran says no. He quit. I don't understand it. I think Duran quit. I don't understand it.
Nobody likes a quitter, and that was a shocking blow. But that's the way it goes. At the end of the day, history does not accept excuses.
Haunted by no mas, abandoned by his fans and his corner, Roberto Duran never quit on himself.
Operation of the right eye. Down he goes, a solid right hand. Roberto Duran has beaten the odds and the experts and won his third world championship.
He fought through his 30s, he fought through his 40s, and Roberto Duran is still fighting.
That's the only thing he knows to do good. So how can you ask a man to quit something that he's been doing his whole life? What he's gonna do?
This is Roberto Duran, Beyond the Glory. On August 12, 2000, at the Yakima Nation Indian Reservation, the greatest lightweight champion ever arrived for a prize fight. But unlike other 49-year-olds in attendance, he wasn't there to watch. Roberto Duran was there to fight. At one time, Duran fought in the sport's most famous palaces for the sport's biggest purses. He was the toughest, nastiest, hardest-hitting lightweight boxer in the world. But while his famous hands of stone may have softened with time, the fighter in his soul refuses to surrender.
He said, the only thing that I could do in my life is fighting. I don't know anything else but fighting. And that's why he's fighting. Now he's 50 years old and he's still fighting.
He had to live a very, very hard life. That's why I think it's made him very strong.
Today in Panama, little boys dream of becoming the next Roberto Duran. When Duran was a boy, he dreamed of putting food on his family's table. Roberto was born in 1951 in the slums of Panama City. He was a true child of the Panama Canal. His mother was a native Indian, his father a Mexican sailor.
Basically, I don't think I exist for my father, and he doesn't really exist for me. I really don't know how my parents met. I just know they met because here I am.
I was 20 years old when I met Roberto's father in Quarry Heights. I used to work across the street from the naval base there. Later on, we got married, and Roberto was born out of that marriage. And a couple of years later, he left me with another woman, and I stayed. stayed alone with Roberto.
Roberto took to the streets to fend for his family.
A veces me quedaba hasta un mes sin ir a la casa.
Sometimes I wouldn't go home 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks at a time. I would sleep in the streets, then wake up in the morning to sell newspapers, to shine shoes, and that's the way it was.
Before long, Roberto was more at home on the streets than at school.
He never went to school. He didn't know how to write or to read. He was like a gypsy. He likes to be free, to do whatever he would like to do.
Prácticamente así. Yo peleaba mucho, pero
I was in many fights as a child. However, I did not know how to fight. I considered myself a wrestler. And the movies that I used to watch, they were Mexican movies, and El Santo, who was a Mexican wrestler, I always watched those types of movies, and that is how I learned how to wrestle. So I would wrestle whoever wanted to pick a fight with me, and I'd basically bash their head in or throw them against the floor because that is what I knew how to do from watching those movies.
en la calle peleándose mucho más rápido que peleando arriba del ring.
I'm a better street fighter than I am a boxer.
At the age of 13, the street fighter followed his older brother into a boxing gym. And by walking through that door, Duran took his first step into a new life.
I see my brother, he hops up into the ring, and all of a sudden they put headgear on him, they put a cup on him, they put gloves on him, and I was like, wow, that's really neat stuff. I want that. I go, Toti, how can I get that? And he says, you've got to be a boxer. So the next day I show up to the gym, all 89 pounds of me, and I became a boxer.
In the shabby boxing dens of Panama City, Roberto Duran was an instant sensation. He turned pro before he reached the age of 16.
When I would spar with these professionals, I would always cut them, make them bleed through the nose, or cut their mouths, and everybody would say that this kid has something special. This kid has something special. And there was a ton of people after me wanting to be a manager, and I didn't know what a manager was, and they would take me over to eat and take me over to have some drinks, and I'm like, damn, I like this lifestyle.
Duran loved the food, loved the drink, and he loved the people. Most of all, Roberto Duran loved to fight.
In 3 or 4 fights, I realized that he was going to be something special. I knew that I have in my hands the next champion of the world.
Duran fought with a primal fury, winning his first 24 fights, 19 by knockout. By age 20, he was being touted for a shot at the title.
His heart, that extra thing that he has that very few fighters have, that extra desire to win.
Coming up, Duran turns a title fight into a street brawl.
Buchanan went down after the bell, aiming a low blow.
And later, Duran confronts his toughest rival.
He would punch you in your face at a press conference. He would kick you at a weigh-in. He would curse you out. He would curse your wife out.
This is Beyond the Glory. With his hands of stone, Roberto Duran lifted himself from poverty, and by 1972, he was the terror of the boxing world. Duran was 21 years old, hungry and confident when he got a title shot against reigning lightweight champion Ken Buchanan. The fight was to be held at New York's Madison Square Garden.
He's been saying a lot the last couple of weeks.
I don't know. I don't understand him.
What about his threats and his promises?
What about them? Oh, he really hurt him that time.
With a savagery that shocked even seasoned fight fans, Duran went after the title like he was back in a street fight. Elbows, low blows, headbutts, anything it took to bring the champion down.
Buchanan went down after the bell, aiming a low blow.
De los asaltos sí, sin querer le pegué los huevos porque él era muy alto.
I recognized that I hit him with low blows early in the fight, but at that moment when the fight ended, no. It was just a lame excuse because I was beating him.
He was brutal, ruthless, and he was the new champion.
The fight has been stopped, and the winner
had come up on the streets hustling for his next meal. Now he was a king. When he returned home, they declared a national holiday.
By the time I got to Panama, I was full of champagne because the president had fully stocked the airplane. And that night, I slept in the presidential palace.
While Duran dined with presidents, he never forgot his people in the slums of Panama City. To them, he was more than a champion. He was their hero.
When he struck a blow, you know what I mean, he struck a blow for them against oppression. He struck a blow against racism. He struck a blow for upward mobility and elevation. Roberto Duran was an icon. He was a hero because he cared about the people that he represented.
He told me once, I like to be like Robin Hood. If I have money, I will give the poor people all the money. And he did. And he did.
Duran even named his son Robin. And behind the cold eyes that terrorized opponents in the ring, his people and his family always saw his heart.
He's a very tough man. But inside, I mean, I'm looking through his eyes. I see my father.
When I look at my dad's eyes, I see a very beautiful man. I can see through his eyes the real inside of him. Me ha enseñado a ser una persona sencilla.
He taught me how to be humble, how to treat everybody the same. Nobody is better than anybody else in this world.
In 1974, Esteban de Jesus of Puerto Rico became the first fighter to knock down Duran and became the first to defeat him. Later, in two brutal rematches, Duran knocked out de Jesus both times. Many years after, Duran got the news that his former rival was dying of AIDS.
We decided to go to Puerto Rico, and we were going to see Esteban de Jesus in the hospital. Here's this guy was dying of, AIDS in bed. He was just thin, and Duran grabbed him from the bed. And he says, "Tú siempre vas a ser mi campeón. You're always going to be my great champ." Like that, and tears coming out of his eyes. And at the time, the Puerto Rican people never liked Duran because he was always beating up on the Puerto Rican fighters and calling things out to the Puerto Ricans. And Puerto Ricans didn't like Duran very much. But after that day, he became a star in Puerto Rico, too, because it showed the people what a great heart he has and what a great human being he is.
He's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You see? Because when he fight, he was another man. Completely another man.
Bueno, no era mentira, era verdad, porque...
In this fight business, you never know. This could be the last time that you're stepping into the ring. You don't know if you're going to come out alive or come out dead, and that's why I had to be like that. And that's why I always wanted to, destroy anyone in front of me.
From 1972 to 1980, Duran retains his title with a brutal efficiency, knocking out 11 of his 12 challengers. But one potential rival was unafraid.
I recall seeing one of Duran's fights in Las Vegas, and I recall having a chance to meet Jackie Gleason at Caesar's Palace at ringside. And being the kind of cocky kid I was, I said, "Mr. Gleason, it's a pleasure meeting you, and by the way, I'm gonna beat that guy one day." And Jackie Gleason looked at me like a father and said, "Son, don't risk your life."
Sugar Ray Leonard became the darling of the boxing world when he captured the gold for America at the 1976 Olympics. By 1980, he was welterweight champion. Sugar Ray was being hailed as the best pound-for-pound boxer in the world. Roberto Duran moved up a weight class to challenge this claim. Their June 1980 bout would be the richest prize fight in history. But while Leonard would make $10 million, Duran would earn less than $2 million. The street fighter couldn't wait.
What comes into play is the psychological warfare, because Duran's looked upon as being a guy who is nasty, who is intimidating.
He would punch you in the face at a press conference. He would kick you at a weigh-in. He would curse you out. He would curse your wife out. He got to my head. When he got into my head.
With Ray, I was so mad I wanted to fight him right then and there at each of these press conferences.
He challenged my manhood. He challenged my manhood.
Curse words. Anything to have him come straight at me so that I could knock him out. You son of a... Your mother's a... You.
Duran walks around like he owns the world. He wants to intimidate not just fighters. He wants to intimidate people in general.
Duran resented the fact that I was the marquee name from a general public standpoint.
At the time, Ray was America's golden boy. And even people in Panama, which kind of hurt me a little bit, didn't think I could beat him. So I went into that fight with something to prove.
Coming up, the brawl in Montreal.
He knocked my teeth back because he was just so possessed. He was a demon.
And later, the man with hands of stone shocks the boxing world.
Yeah, what's happening? Duran says no. I think he's quitting.
This is Beyond the Glory. The Golden Boy versus the Street Fighter. Sugar Ray Leonard versus Roberto Duran. It was June 1980, and they called it the Brawl in Montreal.
And that name, Manos de Piedra, is true. Hands of stone. Every punch, and I'm not exaggerating, every punch that he hit me with, from the body to the head, felt like bricks, stone, rocks.
Midway point of round 2, and Leonard starting to push that jab in there, but he gets rocked by a left hook from Duran.
He knocked my teeth back. My first 3-4 teeth in front, knocked them back because he was just so possessed. He was a demon.
His knee just buckled at that right hand. And look at Duran mocking and taunting Sugar Ray Leonard. I can't believe it.
Even at the end of the fight, after 15 rounds, he pushed me away.
I hit him. I told him, you're no good. You're not a fighter. You're no good. I'm better than you are.
Duran won the fight. In Panama, it was as if they'd won a war. He had departed Panama as a king. He returned as a legend. Roberto Duran was a world celebrity.
That's the best welcome that any person received in Panama since the independence of the Panama from Colombia. More than any other fighter that I know, he had charisma. He had a lot of charisma.
Don King had been promoting Duran since 1973. After the Leonard fight, they had the world at their feet.
It was an exciting era when you had the Roberto Duran era. Women and men alike would come to him, but most certainly the female sex would always be right there on a guy who has it all. He has good looks, he has charm, he's debonair, suave, and he can fight. He got the masculine beauty that he has. He's like Adonis. It was difficult sometimes to really keep him from having a narcissistic complex. In Panama, we'd always have a great time going to his house. He liked to keep animals. As he got more prosperous and he gained more fame and acclaim, you'd have lions and tigers and things in the yard, you know what I mean?
And I went out in the swimming pool, and there was about 60 people all sitting there, eating steaks, drinking Dom Perignon champagne. You know, he couldn't hold on to his money. He was such a generous guy.
Endorsement offers poured in, and fans and rivals alike discovered the gentle soul inside the fighter.
We did a commercial for 7-Up.
Feeling 7-Up, I'm feeling 7-Up.
I emphatically told the producer, I told my attorney, I said, listen, if Duran acts up around my kid, I'm gonna walk away. He was like the gentleman. He was like the nicest guy to my son, to me, shaking my hand, embraced me. He hugged my son, kissed him. It was great.
In the last few days of workouts, Duran seemed to have peaked. After 73 fights with only one defeat, he freely admits he doesn't like to train anymore. He sometimes appeared listless, even uncoordinated.
On top of everything else, they appointed a doctor to be with me, and he just drained me. I was very dehydrated. He was giving me diuretics, sleeping pills.
So I talked immediately to Don King. And I said, Don, we better postpone this fight. Don King told me, we invest a lot of money in that fight and this, and it will be almost impossible.
Unless I get the word that the fight is going to get postponed, I'll fight. I'm like a good soldier.
To get a fast rematch was part one of Leonard's plan. Once inside the ring, he unveiled part two.
Ray Leonard outsmarted Duran. Ray Leonard played him against himself.
My brother, Roger, he gave me that strategy. He said, if you box Duran, if you make him mad, you will frustrate him. If you use your speed, you will drive him crazy.
And he's even doing a little dodging now and a little Ali. He's taunting Duran. He's actually taunting Roberto Duran.
He must have known by then that I really had nothing to give that fight. And that's when he started taunting me. When he realized that I couldn't hurt him.
No one is supposed to do that to the Roberto Duran. I mean, oh, come on, this is the champion. And you playing around with the champion, you dropping your hands, the thing with the bolo and then jabbing.
Look at that.
It drove him crazy. And I figured Duran was so frustrated, they threw his hands up in disgust and just furious and never realizing the ramifications that it would have, the repercussions on the boxing world. They threw his hands up. So, I don't need this. The hell with this.
And what's happening? Duran says no. I think he's quitting.
Being Latin, that Latin machismo, I think the frustration of not being able to fight. And he just threw his hand down and said, no mas, no mas.
What is he saying, Larry?
He says, no, I don't understand.
He's saying no, he quit.
I don't understand it.
I think Duran quit.
I don't understand it.
He physically wasn't fit to fight, so he turns to me and said, I won't fight anymore with this clown. I immediately told him, you have to continue. And then he was ready to start a fighting, but the referee suspended.
I was already in the 8th round, and I wasn't feeling up to it. I started getting really bad stomach cramps. I was like, well, you know what? There was always going to be a rematch. I gave him one, he'll give me one. So the hell with it. Let's just go ahead and end it here.
After the fight, I sent him to an hospital to get a checkout. When I went to the hospital, he was crying. And he told me, Papa, all is my fault. All is my fault. He was very, very sad about what really happened.
Boxing's toughest champion had committed the sport's ultimate sin. Duran fled to the sanctuary of Panama, and boxing fans were left stunned and disheartened.
Nobody likes a quitter, and that was a shocking blow, you know. Had he fought, it would have been much more gallant, with much more valor. But that's the way it goes. At the end of the day, you know, history does not accept excuses.
Coming up, a nation abandons its hero.
I think he felt like he betrayed the people here. He was devastated.
And later, a fighter's quest to restore his good name.
And I just looked at Duran and I said, man, you know, you are the best.
This is Beyond the Glory.
Duran says no. I think he's quitting. He's saying, I don't
Duran would forever be haunted by no mas. After the fight, he returned home to Panama. But this time, there was no president's plane to fly him, and no hero's welcome when he arrived.
I think he felt like he betrayed the people here. And he was very, 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 very sad.
People were hard on him, you know, and my dad is really emotional person. And that got to him a lot.
They were all treating me bad, you know. I didn't even leave my house. Everybody was making fun of me.
He was devastated because everybody's just turned their back on him.
When the world turned its back on Duran, Duran turned to his family. With them, the man who was so vicious in the ring possessed a gentle soul.
He's so sentimental. I mean, you have no idea. I mean, he's a fighter. He's the macho man, you know, the ring, hands of stones. But his family, for him, are like, he gets really, really, really sentimental, you know.
My mom is everything. My mom is everything for him. My mom does everything for him. And he depends on her. And it's a very, very beautiful relationship because they really love each other.
They've been through so many things, but they get along real great, you know. Sometimes it's hard to see a family that stand up for 27, 30 years, you know, and they still kiss themselves and hug themselves as they were kids growing up, because, I mean, they met like when they were like 14, 15.
It was one Christmas, and we were all getting big. He was looking at us, and he was crying, saying, look, our kids are growing up. Someday they're just going to get married and they're going to leave us. And he was crying.
Duran is also a protective father. And the soft-hearted family man can suddenly turn back into the man with the hand of stone.
I didn't want to bring my boyfriend to the house because I knew my dad. He was going to go crazy. So I asked my uncle to introduce my boyfriend to my dad. And I was hiding in the kitchen, looking through the window. What was happening? Oh my God, I know my dad is going to start screaming at him. And then my uncle introduced my boyfriend to him, and he just looked at him like this. I'm going to tell you something. You better behave good. If not, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill your dad. I'm going to kill your mother. I'm going to set your house on fire. I'm going to kill all your family and destroy your house if you ever do something bad to my daughter. You hear me? You hear me?
In 1981, when Duran attempted a comeback after no mas, the fire seemed gone. He fought like a broken man. And consecutive losses fueled speculation that his career was over.
When I seen him lose to a fighter, Kirkland Lane, who really couldn't tie his shoestrings, and I felt that it was time for Roberto to retire.
Within a year of no mas, Don King dropped him. Carlos Eleta and the rest of his corner left him as well.
He was finished. He was washed up. Nobody wanted to promote him anymore.
But Roberto Duran would not quit on himself. And the fire inside the fallen champion began to burn again.
I know it's going to be hard, but I'm only fighting because I need to show the world that I can be a champion again.
Manos de Piedra is a big finisher when he gets somebody in trouble. What a surprise.
Esto es lo que quiero yo. Esto es lo que quiero yo. Porque venga.
Okay, muchas gracias. Yes, the championship. He wants it now, and he wants it next. But can he do it against a new and young champion?
Davey Moore was then the undefeated junior middleweight champion. He was the biggest fighter Duran had ever faced. It was 3 years since Duran lost to Sugar Ray Leonard. Against Moore, nobody gave him a chance.
In Panama, they were all saying, Davey Moore is a strong guy. He's a young guy. He's going to hurt Roberto. He's going to beat Roberto. When all odds are against me, that's when I'm at my best.
Hey, one thing you see that right hand. Big right hand, he's staggered. And now the right eye. The place of the right eye. Down he goes, a solid right hand. Roberto Duran
lost to Roberto Duran. That was an incredible fight, an incredible performance by Roberto Duran.
Roberto Duran has beaten the odds and the experts and won his 3rd world championship.
And I just looked at Duran and I said, man, you know, you are the best. You're it.
Duran returned to Panama. It had taken 3 years, but Roberto Duran was once again a king.
When he won, his country going crazy. It was crazy. Everybody just wanted to be the great champion.
I remember very well coming back from after this fight and being in a limousine and being in that parade and just thinking and sitting and looking out the window, thinking, look how many hypocrites there are out there. The same people that were bashing me, the same people that were kicking me when I was down are the same people that are here with open arms. They're just two-faced people. That's what I kept thinking.
Coming up, an aging fighter refuses to give up.
I knew this guy was going to hurt him, and I cried that night when I watched him fight. I cried in my house watching him fight that night.
And later, the people's champion keeps giving.
He's out there in his old neighborhood. He has all, like most of his purse money with him, and he's giving it away to the poor people, to the little kids.
This is beyond the glory. By winning his 3rd world championship at age 33, Roberto Duran had won back his title and his good name. But it wasn't enough. He kept climbing back into the ring fight after fight, year after year. No victory was ever great enough, and no defeat terrible enough to get him to quit. With each year and each fight, his family grew concerned.
Every time anyone hit my dad, I'll be very, very angry. Why are they hitting my dad? Come on, Dad, hit them back. I want blood. I want them to bleed, and I want them to see them suffer.
When he was 37, Duran moved up yet another weight class, stepping into the squared circle against the reigning middleweight champion, Iran Barkley.
When I saw Barkley, I said, oh, yeah, Dad. Oh, joy. This is a very big dude. I don't know how you're going to do it.
Barkley hit Duran with a punch, and it looked like Duran's head was spinning around.
The aging fighter refused to go down. Then Duran summoned the classic 5-punch combination and for the 4th time became a world champion. The stain of no mas was a fading memory.
Barkley's in trouble. He's down.
And still he continued, bravely to some, foolishly to others. In December 1989, nearly a decade after their last fight, Roberto Duran finally got his rematch against Sugar Ray Leonard. Both fighters appeared painfully past their prime, and Duran lost by decision. As long as someone could make $1 off Duran's name, he had no trouble finding someone to fight. When Roberto Duran was 47, Don King, who had dropped Duran after no mas, promoted a fight between Duran and 28-year-old middleweight champion William Joppy.
That was ridiculous. I mean, you can't put him in with a world-class fighter. That's criminal.
I never try to tell a fighter what to do. I can advise him. I can share with him my empathy, my sympathy, my commiseration with what he's doing and why I think it should be done this, that, or the other way. But the decision will remain 100% with him.
I know what they were doing with Duran was inhumane, you know, to take a 47-year-old man and fight a full-fledged middleweight, young, 28 years old. And I knew this guy was going to hurt him.
You know, at the time he was 47, I was 28. And I was like, I'm not going to let this 47-year-old guy beat me. He had his times in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and the 90s. So let me get a little bit, right? So I had to take care of business. But they always told me not to look in his eye because he had that cold black eyes. And I didn't look neither.
And I cried that night when I watched him fight. I cried in my house watching him fight that night.
By Joppy. Oh, what a right hand, and that staggers Duran. Joppy.
That was a very, very, very bad night. And I have it here. I was running. They have to grab me. I remember Don King scream, grab her, because I was running towards the ring. Because I was going to go inside the ring with my shoes to hit Joppy.
In middle age, Duran has taken beatings as brutal as those he dished out as a young man. Yet in a sport that often seems to be more about dollars than glory, one fighter who is never in it for the money stays in the game. Roberto Duran is still fighting.
He's 49 years old, and he's so brave and just catch the wrong shot. And it's going to be a very sad day in boxing if Duran got hurt in the ring, I tell you.
Me, I really don't want him to fight anymore because I want my dad to be okay, you know. But it's his decision, and I'm his son, and I'm going to support him all the way.
Can you imagine? He's been fighting his whole life. That's the only thing he knows to do good. So how can you ask a man to quit something that he's been doing his whole life? What he's going to do?
Coming up, the fighter approaches 50.
I just won a world title. I feel good again. I want to fight until I either say, okay, that's enough, or they beat me.
This is Beyond the Glory.
Roberto Durán, el ídolo del pueblo panameño, que con bravura, talento y con empeño se convirtió en ese gran campeón mundial.
In his 5th decade as a professional fighter, Roberto Duran refuses to lay down his gloves. And though he once fought for millions of dollars, Duran sees no irony in climbing back into the ring for the thousands he makes today. On his 49th birthday, he won his 5th world championship, the super middleweight belt from the lightly regarded National Boxing Association.
Bueno, primero que me acabo con una campeón ahora.
Well, I won a world title and I feel good again. I want to defend the title. I want to fight until I say that's enough or they beat me. And I'm going to take care of myself that much more now.
Roberto knows as well as I do what he can do at this stage in the game, okay? And we're smart like that. If he comes to me and says, well, I want to fight, I'd rather be involved than not be involved, because if I'm involved, I'm able to protect him the way I want to protect him.
The spirit of the champion still lives in his middle-aged body. And if he can no longer be the best boxer in the world, Roberto Duran remains the champion of his people.
I get a phone call in my hotel from his wife, I believe it was. She's like, Tony, you got to stop Roberto. I go, what do you mean? What's he doing? He's like, he's out there in his old neighborhood. And you go, well, what's wrong with that? And he always does that. You know, he has this all, like most of his purse money with him, and he's giving it away to the poor people, to the little kids. You can't change Roberto. That's who he is, you know, and no one's ever going to change that. He came from poverty. Those are his people. He's not afraid to be poor, and he's a giving person.
I've gone to airports with Duran, you know, after a fight, and he's got his Duran T-shirt on, and the baggage guy's gone to him, man, Roberto Duran, I like that T-shirt. Oh, no problem. He's been left without a shirt in the airport, and all of a sudden he had to go buy another one because he didn't have a shirt. He took the shirt right off his back and gave it to the guy.
Roberto was one of the masses, you know what I mean? He exemplified Rudyard Kipling when he said you can walk with kings but yet keep the common touch.
Every time Roberto Duran steps into the ring, even today as he nears 50, he becomes the young street fighter from Panama. His mother still sings the same song that she has always sung for him before every fight he's ever had, since he was 16.
Este amor apasionado que anda todo alborotado por volver y me muero por...
It will be recorded in the annals of time as little kids 1,000 years from now will be reading the tablets and things of what happened here in this 20th century, in the 21st century, that a great fighter lived that came from Panama, and his name was Roberto Manos de Piedra Duran.
My people, America, I love you. Thank you for support for me for a lot of time. Thank you.
On the next Beyond the